Can you just share some specific examples of election fraud? What are some specific examples that informed this bold decision, this audacious decision, even after the riots, to decertify the results? You must have seen some concrete evidence.
Well, Pam, the things that I was not objecting to the election on behalf of was things like Dominion voting machines changing ballots, or these U-Haul trucks pulling up filled with ballots for Joe Biden as president. The thing I was objecting for is things like, like I said, in the state of Wisconsin, particularly in the town of Madison, there was an appointed official in that town who actually went against the will of the state legislature and created ballot drop boxes, which is basically ballot harvesting that was happening in the parks.
But this was all litigated. You know that the Trump campaign litigated all of this, more than 60 cases, and they lost. Either the cases were dismissed, the Trump campaign withdrew, or they never brought a case because they didn't have the evidence to back it up.
Indeed, I believe specifically, and this is the one that I debated on behalf of on the House floor, in Wisconsin, that was never heard because they dismissed it because of standing. Now, I don't believe that that is concrete enough of a way to say.
Well, there were three Trump appointed. Okay, so you have Wisconsin, but you ended up not actually voting against Wisconsin. It was just Arizona and Pennsylvania because you didn't have the Senate votes. But three Trump-appointed judges actually threw out these cases because of merit. It was because of merit. There were three Trump-appointed judges out of all of these judges and the more than 60 cases that were tossed out. And you keep talking about Wisconsin. I'm still not hearing any specific examples of fraud. If you would, just tell us, what are the specific examples you saw of fraud? Because when you think of fraud, you think of a vote, you're slipping one past the election official, or a vote was stolen, somehow it didn't count. Did you see that specifically?
No, Pam, and like I said, that's not the reason I contested the election.
Hold on. So you wanted to throw out millions of votes without actually seeing any concrete evidence of fraud? Because that's what you were doing when you were contesting the election. The intent there was throwing out millions of votes.
Well, I disagree with you on that point. That was not my intent. My intent was to hold up the Constitution, and setting up ballot drop boxes, which is essentially ballot harvesting in Wisconsin, is unconstitutional because the state legislature said they didn't want that.
So you know more than the judge, the Trump-appointed judge, who actually looked at that case before the election and dismissed the Trump campaign's argument that drop boxes are unconstitutional. And if you would you point to me and where in the Constitution it says that drop boxes are unconstitutional? I don't recall seeing that in the Constitution.
No, so the way that I believe it was unconstitutional is because in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution, it states that only state legislatures will mandate the manner in which an election is conducted.
Okay.
Right.
We actually have that on the screen. Go ahead.
Excellent. But when you go into the state of Wisconsin, you see that the state legislature actually voted actively against having vote drop boxes there. And then in the town of Madison, they decided to set them up anyways.
So you're making an obscure case on this. Other constitutional experts say, look, what this says right here, this Article 2 of the Constitution says that the legislature can decide what dictates the electors. And they did decide before this election. The states did decide that the plurality of the vote would dictate who the electors are. So that did actually happen. And I just want to also ask you, what sort of research did you put in? What kind of work did you put in before you decided to make this objection? I'm just curious what you read. Did you actually go to any of the states to look at the voter fraud? What kind of research did you put into this?
No, so we hired three constitutional lawyers who looked into this for our campaign. And then the findings that we had is that, as you said, I believe in reading the Constitution through the prism of original intent. And I believe the original intent of the framers of the Constitution was to make sure that the federal government can't exercise overreach and go into these states and dictate our laws of how to run elections.
So do you think the intent, too, was to throw out millions of votes because of a suspicion, not even concrete evidence, because of evidence, I should say, just because of a suspicion? Do you think that that was what our founders intended?
Well, we do have concrete evidence that there were ballot drop boxes inside of Wisconsin. I don't have the right pages on me, but I would be happy to send that to you.
Right, but I'm still curious because I'm still confused on the unconstitutionality of drop boxes because a Trump-appointed judge dismissed that argument before the election. But if you would just answer my question, so you said you had 3 constitutional lawyers. What other work did you put in to actually looking at whether there was fraud in this past election? Because as you know, Congressman, and you knew coming on the show, look, you were spouting some really inflammatory claims after the election and before the January 6th riot, okay? You voted even after the riot to decertify results, millions of votes. So I'm just wondering, what kind of work did you put into making sure you were rock solid before making those claims and deciding to do that?
Yes, ma'am. So mainly it was going through having these constitutional lawyers look into the state of Wisconsin, the people that were actually supposed to try the case, and then looking at their evidence, and we presented that to the American people. A significant portion of the American people agreed with it. I agreed with it myself, and I believe that it was a constitutional infraction, and so that's why I opposed the election. Now, you keep bringing up that I did it even after the January 6th insurrection, which, again, I think is despicable and I absolutely condemn. But the people who changed their vote because of that, I believe they were doing it because of political expedience, either if they were going to contest or if they weren't going to contest. The actions of January 6th do not change what happened in the November election, and I believe what happened was